Trigger warning. The We Are One podcast aims to shed light on the abuse experience within the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church. The stories shared are from survivors who bravely recount their personal experiences. It is important to note that unless an abuser has been convicted in a court of law, they are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The podcast does not serve as a legal judgment, but rather is a platform for survivors to share their truth. Welcome to the We Are One podcast. Let's jump right into today's episode. Here's your hosts, Olivia and Jennifer.
Welcome back to the We Are One podcast. I'm your host, Olivia.
And I'm your co-host, Jen.
And on today's episode, we're sitting down with our guest named Barbara, and she's just going to go over what life was like for her in the IFB, and just talk about some of the hard topics that, we continue talking about and the same patterns. And, we're hoping and praying that every time an episode comes out that it's making one less feel alone and helping someone maybe realize that you're in a cult, or you once were, and just kind of like a reflection moment. And so without further ado, let's get into today's episode.
Your experience in the IFB, within church, your teenage years, so tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my origin comes from Temple in Detroit, Michigan,
Temple Baptist,
which was now associated with your family, Pastor Vic, and the trickle down. Now, mind you, when all this was going on, I was like 5 or 6 when I my earliest memory of that place. Yeah. We were there until I was about 11. There was a big huckapuckus that happened over there, and when everybody split, we all went into, there was Grace Baptist, Bethel.
Yeah, I probably
First Baptist, Prayer, and I'm trying to remember the other one.
Yeah,
it's downriver. But when we all went into our sectors, that's when I came to Prayer, and that's where what I would say the informative years really happened, because we had talked about before about like the going to Temple. We were allowed to wear jeans. We were allowed to wear shorts, like modest, but we were allowed to wear them. Where when we got over to Prayer, I wouldn't say it was the first year, but I definitely would say it was like a progressive, on certain things started shifting that I was like, oh, we didn't do this before, but now we do, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And when I was, I argue that me and my girlfriend argue this point because we can't honestly pinpoint the dates unless we start going into the books. But approximately 17, I got pregnant, had a miscarriage, and the church got completely involved in that situation, and inadvertently was pretty much asked to confess my sins in front of the church by 4 beautiful, and let's worry about this word, deacons. That were nice enough to come to my house after a week after my father had passed away, to me and my mother, and pretty much put down the hammer. And our response was, we're out. Mm-hmm. So from that point on, I pretty much started the disconnection fairly harshly. I went to a couple different churches, but again, the phone tree. So everywhere I went, there was already a stigma. Yeah. And the more my mother searched for her views, I just started walking away. And those were the years that more got exposed afterwards. But yeah, I was 17, just before 18 when I walked out.
So let's backtrack just a little on this, just so then everybody can get like the whole
picture. Yeah.
Picture. Okay. So you and Jen went to the same church, just in case people don't know prayer, like that is,
Yep,
you
her
guys,
Baptist.
yeah, you guys are, you guys knew each other, and you have a different experience than like even Jen, because like you said, you got pregnant, and you also had a miscarriage and stuff like that, and with your episode, we're seeing, we have other survivors that have gotten pregnant at a young age, and we're covering that and like how the church went about it and stuff like that, and that stigma behind it. So I first want to kind of talk about that, if you're open to
Oh,
it.
absolutely.
Can you talk about, did you get pregnant by someone in the church, outside of the church? Did you?
No, I don't know if, okay, he was a friend, a school friend of the Lefevres.
Okay.
And there was a group of them, and I forget how we kind of met, but we ended up hooking up through that situation.
Okay.
He was a little bit older. He had a car.
Yeah.
He had a moped first.
Not the moped.
Oh man, that's so hot.
I know, right? Driving up on my moped. But we kind of, he would come to church. The concept, and especially because he was neighbors to the Lefevres, I think his views were a little bit like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that's how we met, and
Okay.
and we were together, I would say probably 8 months.
Okay.
Okay.
And when you got pregnant, did you tell anybody, like did anybody know, or
yes, I have a lifelong friend that we are connected because of our older siblings married. Yeah. And produced. And so, but yeah, she has known pretty much all of it.
Yeah.
Once we really became really good friends, because, well, I mean, she picked up on a few things. But she was my go-to, because again, I walk into a room and I kind of own it, where she's demure. So she still to this day sits there and says, "Oh my God, I lived through you." And I'm like, yeah, that was a bad idea. But yeah, I did have a support system in that. I mean, we were young. She held my hand through a lot of it. When it came to the pregnancy, she knew. She was the first person I told. Once I found out figured out what was going on and stuff. It wasn't more, well, and see that here we go with that timeline. At the time that I found out that I was pregnant, Jim had been diagnosed with cancer again, and this time it was in his liver. So he was actually in the VA hospital almost like 6 months in and out of the hospital with treatment. Meanwhile, I'm with this guy, so I had a lot of time on my hands.
Yeah.
Let's just say.
Yeah.
As an adult,
did your mom know that you were pregnant?
Oh yes, yeah. I told her, yeah, that was a loaded situation. And of course, I mean, as a mom, I get it now. Then some of the things that were said and done from her, I was just like, ugh. But again, her first mindset was, what are people going to think? Mm-hmm. And that as a kid, that's literally like, I'm not worried about what the world's thinking. I need to know what I need to do. I got to figure this out. And
you're scared. You're a 17-year-old girl. You're pregnant, right. And your mom's like, "What's everyone going to think about this?"
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I'm scared.
And it wasn't even everybody. It was more like, what's the church? And I'm like,
yeah, of course.
Image is everything.
Yeah.
Image is everything.
Yes.
You can do it in the private of your home. You can have the skeletons, but you got to make sure you look good. Make sure your family looks
good. The Hallmark card all the time.
My mom said Stepford Wives. Everybody looks like Stepford Wives. Like everybody,
they ain't that cute. They ain't that cute. I'm sorry.
Well, so true.
They match and stuff. No.
But once I can't remember. I don't remember the chain of events of who kind of found out first or whatever.
Yeah.
Which I touched about. Not everybody had that same response of like, ooh, that kind of stuff. I had some people that were what I would say the truest Christian form of a human being, having empathy, love, and so forth, that really did help us get through that situation. But it went through the church like fire.
Yeah,
which
for sure.
And
gossip.
Yeah,
So.
exactly.
And the way that it all kind of came to a head was like almost I I would almost sit there and say you couldn't make it up in a movie if you tried.
Okay.
But because I was being forced to kind of play the role of, oh yeah, I'm pregnant, but I got to go to church. I got to put face out there. Jim's in the hospital. My mother's trying to just flush through. My brother, he's got his whole life. He's married and has kids at this point. And we went to church camp. And
I remember this.
yeah, and I was forced to go. The reasoning was they wanted to take me out of the element. Because my time was either with my boyfriend, at home, school, or the hospital, or a church. Those were the trifectas. My boyfriend, of course, would transport me to and from the hospital, so on and so forth. So they really wanted to kind of segregate that situation really quickly as much as they could, because he and I had already kind of said, yes, we wanted to keep the baby. And the first thought of, oh, you're going to get married. No, we didn't want that. We were like, okay, we'll figure this out together. But then there was more and more pressure starting to come on. And it wasn't his parents, it was my mom and the church.
Yeah.
It started coming into play. So the reasoning was, get her out of the hospital, get her fresh air, let her be surrounded by the cult, cocoon her, kind of a thing. And inadvertently, I ended up having a miscarriage there.
How far along were you?
5 or 6 months. I couldn't give you the time frame.
So you were in like the 20-25
yeah.
weeks.
Yeah, so she was at youth camp when she started miscarrying.
Yeah.
Just because
you could, if you knew me, you could see that I had a little bit of a stomach, but I wasn't shown like I was very good at being able to, like, nobody could, if you didn't know, you didn't know. But you could see, there's a picture, again, here we go with those pictures, but there's a picture that I know of that I was like, oh, that's the one. You
still have the picture?
I haven't been able to. My mom won't give up her box.
I was gonna say we could put it in here.
That would be awesome.
She has a big box, army tote that was Jim's, of pictures, and I've been asking it for about a year and a half now, because I know
try to get it before this airs.
She won't let me touch it. Seriously, she's got it in her head that I'm gonna go through there and burn Jim's pictures, and I'm like, that's not gonna happen.
You're like, I don't want his pictures, I want mine.
Right. So I mean, now it's just kind of turned into like, one of these days I'm just gonna give the key to the kids and they're just gonna haul it out and she will forget that it's even there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So at youth camp you were miscarrying, and
I was
then
miscarrying, and
literally I remember as I was in junior high when you were in high school, so I remember being there and all of a sudden you were there, and then all of a sudden you weren't there. I was like, where did Barb go?
How big was your guys' like youth?
Like, we had a big youth.
Oh, that was huge. It was
so like it. Well, I was asking because like you said, you remember like she was there, but then I was just curious how big, like if people like that are gonna listen to this that know both of you be like, oh my gosh, yeah, I remember she was gone. You know what I mean? Like
I can't remember how many churches actually were there, but
I want to say there was like 7 or 8 churches total that went from all over, mainly the Midwest.
Yeah.
That would come.
I was just curious
camp.
how many people though come from your church. You know what I mean? Like if somebody,
right.
I would say like maybe 60 total.
Okay, yeah. So people would have noticed that you were gone. Basically.
Oh yeah.
Between junior high and high school at that time,
Yeah.
our youth group was huge.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, for like an average size IFB church, we had a big youth group. We had the biggest youth group at camp.
Yeah.
Right.
Of all.
So yeah, it was.
When you started miscarrying, do you know, like, was it an activity that made you, or was it just something that, like?
Honestly, I'm sure they told me at the time what had inadvertently come down the lines was at one point they said that I would never viably hold a child full term.
Oh, okay.
It's something with my chemistry. I struggled through all 3 of my pregnancies. My viable pregnancies. I had 2 miscarriages. But after that one, they, you know, their first thing was, of course, you're young, this and so on and so forth. But quite honestly, it was kind of swept under the table. Like I wasn't seen by more doctors afterwards and stuff. It was kind of like, you had a miscarriage and now we're going on. So
then take us after youth camp.
So I was pulled. I was pulled out of the camp. They got me home. We went through that. In that time frame, I had found out from my boyfriend's best friend that he was sniffing around some other girl while I was gone. And his best friend ended up coming and being a great support system. Meanwhile, I had like, I think like 3 or 4 days where I was home resting and so on and so forth. By the time I got back up to the hospital, Jim was in a coma. So I kind of resented that situation there because I was like, you took time away from me, but kind of glad that I wasn't there on so many levels. It was from the time of the miscarriage to him dying was, I want to say 10 days. So let me tell you, we knew we were the talk of the town at that situation. I would say that people were very supportive through mourning him and going through that process. But by that time, I really didn't want to be around anybody there because everywhere I went, it was like I was under a microscope, or I felt like I was in the fishbowl. So I'm very lucky to have, again, my girlfriend Crit.
Love her.
Literally held my hand through the whole situation. Definitely my vices had started showing up. My smoking, my like, oh, you know what, I sure could use a belt around now kind of a thing. But not that I drank at that point, but that started very short afterwards. But
so you were in a downward spiral.
Oh yeah.
And understandably so. I mean, you were 17. All of this happened within 10 days of each other. And then, you know, tell us a little bit more about when the news got out about you being pregnant, how the men in the church got together, came to your house and confronted you. To me, that, like, I want to get to that. I do want to say that, like, when we first came to prayer, there was several people there that had been there for a long time. I don't know if they were like there from like the founding of the church, but I knew they were there for when like Jack Story was there the previous
right
pastor. And so some of these families stayed to sort of be interrupters, let's call them that, within the ministry that my dad was doing at prayer.
Right.
So every little thing they were pushing back against like what, anything my dad wanted or whatever. So they were quite challenging, we'll say, to my dad. And so a lot of times they would do things behind his back. My dad would have never allowed that to happen, for these men to come to your house and be demanding of a 17-year-old girl who just found out she was pregnant, scared out of her mind, and demand that she get up in front of 500 people on a church, service.
Hey, at least your dad,
I know that is like a common thing in the IFB, but
my former pastor did that in the 90s to multiple girls. Talk about how scary that is.
Steve, the walk away at the moment at that time was these men walked into our house. There's just me and my mother. That's where like I give a lot of grace, because I know that there was a lot of influences. There was a lot of people that I think were putting more pokes into the fire. And I think it was, I hate to say it, but I was being used as a poster child. If you do this,
yep,
let me whip this out. See what?
Yeah.
You want to be like her? Yeah, we kind of started pegging, because even before the miscarriage, you could see what I would say the pods had started happening around me. Who would talk, who wouldn't. You were starting to hear things coming in. Of course, I'm friends with some of these the children of these parents. Mm-hmm. So I was starting, even that dynamic had shifted. People were being told to stay away from me. I was piece by piece, before the miscarriage, I was being segregated. After, they were nice enough to wait a week after Jim passes to start this conversation. But yeah, they came in, they're with their list of demands of, well, you basically need to repent, and you need to stand up in front of the church and, do your confession to the world. And this is what, once you do that, then you can come back, but you have to stay in the back. You cannot hang out with any of your friends. They are, and it was just a list of just kind of demands of like, you're going to behave, you're going to be, and that was one of the times that my mom actually was like, no, we're not. No, we're not. She's not doing that. And my response at that time, and I kind of still to this day kind of pat myself on the back, because I wasn't at that time somebody that came with a quick whip. But I turned around and told him, I was like, the only people I need to ask for forgiveness was God, my mom, and my brother, because I shamed them. And I left it at that.
Mm-hmm. Good for you.
Yeah.
And I think at that moment, we both felt the weight of it. She was segregated by people. There was a lot of people that just really, we're praying for you, but
sure. And that's where it ended.
They're looking at it like she can't control her daughter. What's going on?
Oh yeah.
So we're gonna pray for you, but we're not gonna talk to you.
We're not gonna help you. We're not gonna do anything.
I know a lot of people like that.
And I can honestly sit there and say, at the age that I was, and I now can have the words for it, but there was a full moment where I was just like, this is my way out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't stop crying over that? I cried more about what I would say my friendship group, because I didn't have friends out of school. Everything was indoctrinated. Actually, I had friends at church and at school. They were dual. So even that started showing its colors a little bit. So walking out, I think, was probably way easier for me than it was for my mom. Hands down it is. She's still affiliated. But I pretty much, I walked out probably with my head up high, because I had enough. There's just so many little instances that, like I got pegged for, that it just got to that point where I was just like, nothing I'm ever going to do is going to be right for these people. And you're sitting there telling me this is God's way. Yeah, okay. That's not the same thing that I've been hearing in the pulpit.
Yeah. Okay, so it's funny how karma works, because when you judge somebody for something, you end up eventually coming face to face with that yourself somehow.
Oh, I've seen it come to fruition.
Okay. So let me tell you something about one of the deacons. And again, we will not name their names, but I know who the deacons were. I talked to my mom. She confirmed, yeah, that guy was a deacon then, this guy, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Well, one of those deacons that I guarantee you was at your house demanding you get up and confess your freaking sins.
And
right?
he was having an affair with
and bingo. And let me tell you this. He came in to a pastor. Every year we had pastors fellowship, fall fellowship at our church.
Yep.
He came in to the church drunk off his butt.
Oh, I didn't hear that part.
Oh yeah. Drunk off his butt, confessed to the deacons and my dad in my dad's office to his affair with another lady in the church who will remain nameless because I don't, whatever. Because I'm not like that. I'm not going to blast people. It's like, whatever. They did their thing and whatever. But yeah, he was drunk off his butt. He was like belligerent. My dad pulled him in his office. The group of deacons kind of came with him, and he confessed to having an affair with this married woman in the church in great detail.
Oh.
And went through in great detail what they did to each other.
Oh.
And it was like, okay, wait a minute, rewind. Let's talk about what you did to a 17-year-old girl demanding she get up when you're 17.
Right.
17-year-old. I mean, so many 17-year-olds get in trouble, get pregnant, whatever. I mean, like,
the people,
me, it's like almost like it's like normal, for
people
a lot
that
of it is. It's very
the ironicity to that. The ironicity to that is the people that you're talking about, that trifecta. I babysat for all of them. I was me, Crit. There was 2 other girls. It depended on what was going on in the church situation. Either I was one of the top babysitters that got called, but if there was like what I would say like a church meeting, there were 3 or 4 of us that were babysitting because we would have like 8 to 10 kids.
Yeah.
One house, and all the parents would go up. So with that said,
where were they going? Going to watch the cathedral?
Oh, no. There's times where I'd be watching one set and then one of my girlfriends would be watching the other set. And now in reflectiveness, it's just kind of like, oh.
It makes you wonder. I'm just saying, it just makes you wonder.
Yeah, that's a little fast. And you brought up the other part of this little shindig is that the exposure that was put on my world.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like I pretty much got a colonoscopy after, you know what I mean? Sure, everybody knew my business. Everybody had an opinion about it. And by the time that I would say like the fight or flight stopped, it was more of a relief to get out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was scared because now now I'm disconnected from all the people that I would say my core friends and people that I thought were like my family, to now having my mom and my brother. Crit was, of course, because we were so attached because of our siblings. But I literally had to step into a world I really didn't totally understand on so many levels.
Yeah.
And I think the worst part, her and I have had a conversation about it. I've healed for it, but it just goes to show you what's being said into their ears to how they choose to react to it. But I had somebody send me a 3-page letter of basically telling me what a horrible sinner I was, what a horrible Christian I was a slut. How it just ran me down and said prayer a few times. That going into prayer
That'll trigger
will
you.
trigger me faster than shit.
Yeah.
I have my coils are up, my anxiety level goes up, I get ticky.
Same.
Depending, well, Crit, her and I can walk through and be like that, and we have really good memories. I have some really good memories in that basement. Sorry, mentally trailing off.
I love you. I love it.
We love honesty.
Oh, and I don't shy around my history now. I mean, then I didn't want everybody to keep on
You were a normal
it.
teenage girl, Barb. You were
Oh,
a normal teenage girl.
When I sit there and say, I've said it before, when I came into this world, I was not meant for this family. Religion. Okay, and again, we've talked about this, the boob thing. I was tall. At the age of like 13, I was already a double D, working my way to a triple D. So there's no way of hiding those.
You can't. No.
No, and you know what? That was. I mean, there was a girl I know. A girl. She's a woman now, but you know, whatever. She was a teenage, like she was younger, whatever. She was bigger chested, and she got kicked out of the choir because her boobs were a distraction. And if you listen to this, hey girl, hey, I think that is so crazy. And that was something my parents even thought was absurd. Was like, you're going to do that? Like, she can't help it. And she's like, what? You know? And you had to go upstairs and change in the attic. Yeah. But yeah, no.
I literally, I had history there. There's a lot of guys that know my name. And I got nailed for a lot of it.
A lot of guys knew my name.
I love that.
I hope occasionally I pop in their head and go, oh wow. Yeah. And I don't shy around it. I mean, it's kind of a running joke with my husband that I've been married or together with for 32 years of like, wow, I'm glad I didn't meet you then. I was like, honey, you would have had 3 months. 3 months. Then you've been gone. Which still, I even when I met him, I was like, you have a 3-month warranty. We're good. Oh, because I made it very clear I wasn't gonna have kids. I wasn't gonna get married. I wasn't doing none of that. I was gonna just live my life. And here he comes in and rocked my world. But I got pegged for how I dressed. I brought up about, and me and Crit are trying to find the damn picture. I almost want to sit there and say it's in a book. It was for one of the senior banquets. And my cousin had given me one of her bridesmaids dresses. Or
what color was the dress? Because maybe I can find the
blue.
picture. I have a bunch of
blue. It literally looks like Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind. It's that kind of style, and I loved it.
I'm gonna look at pictures because we have a bunch of old prayer pictures from the senior banquets and stuff.
And there's a picture of Jim, Crit, Carrie, Jen, and I want to say Tab, but that.
Okay.
So it's in there.
Look for it.
But we went to the banquet. And we were sitting around, and you were supposed to write like
a letter
or something nice about somebody else, and so on.
No,
and so
you had to write a letter to your parents.
Oh no, this one wasn't that. This one, it was like you were supposed to say something. I think it was supposed to come off like kind, like a little note like this.
No.
And they were passed around everybody.
Oh, okay. You guys might have done something different. You guys didn't read the letter to your parents and the parents read the letter to you?
No, we didn't have it.
Okay, because they started doing that, and that was like brutal. That was so brutal. Like,
no, thank you.
Yeah. So this was like, write something kind about your neighbor and pass it around.
Yeah, and that kind of like, and the thing what was written about me was something about, I wish I could remember the exact words, but basically it was kind of like, let your light shine, but not.
Wait a minute. Who wrote your note?
We don't know. Still to this day, we really don't know. Because the
So
other,
if you're watching this, we're gonna try to find out.
I
Like,
really
I
wish
bet
it
you it
did.
was one of the. I bet you it was one of the youth leaders.
Probably. Because by that time, like I said, by that time I was you could see I was starting to poke the fences, finding where I could get out on certain things. But the irony is the other person that had the same personality as me, I'll drop the name, but you can delete it. He and I still to this day constantly laugh about that because he and I were pretty much toe to toe in what we were doing.
Yeah.
I got nailed for it. He never did. And he and I have talked about that multiple times. He was screwing around with a whole bunch of girls.
Yes, he was.
love that.
I mean, he got one of the pregnant too.
Yeah.
No.
did
And the deacons probably didn't go to his house and demand that.
Where's
get up
that?
No.
I'm just saying, I love the guy, but
It takes two.
it didn't happen. The guys did not get that treatment.
No. And that was one of the things, like even he has turned around and said he was like, when it was going on, he felt bad because we hung out at the same parties. We hung out, like we started, there was an extension at school now that started playing out, and nobody took a second look at him. And then when him and pregnant, that was handled way gently compared to what mine.
Oh yeah.
Oh well, yeah. That's what's gonna happen.
That's
They're gonna
standard IFB right there.
Right.
Men can do whatever they want. They can go have an affair and
Yeah.
go to and be drunk at a church.
Yeah.
Well,
what about the woman who was caught in adultery in the Bible, right? She was thrown down. All the men were around ready to stone her. Why don't you get the dude that was just boo-fooing her in the house? Why don't you go grab his butt and throw him down on the ground?
Right.
Too? But no, they didn't do that. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be PG, y'all. I am trying.
You had, like by that time we had, I think the group that I was in, we had started seeing the division, like it's not so, I wouldn't say it's so prominent before teenage years.
Yeah.
I would say it's subtle, but once you hit those teenage years, that's when things start to really show their colors.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It was day and night on so many levels of things that I know that boys was pulling that I was getting nailed for, and I took it. I just took it. I didn't care. At that point, there was a certain level of
like
all of them that I was just like, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do.
Also, it kind of like you just, well, one, that was funny, but two, you're reminding me so much of me because it was like, even if I was telling the truth, even if I was like, hey, so-and-so is doing this too, it's like, nobody's going to believe you because you are already named as the troubled person.
Yeah.
So you know what? Because like for me, with my mindset, I was like, you know what? I'm labeled as trouble. I'm going to give you trouble. I'm going to give you a circus show.
And that is the truth of it. And my husband consistently, actually he's been pegged a couple of times, but if you tell me not to do something,
that's me. That's me
I'm
too.
gonna do it.
Don't
tell me
to do it.
I'm like, don't tell me what to do. I've never liked authority, so you're definitely
right. But yeah, so like literally, like by the time, I would say it took about like 2 or 3 months to let some of the dust settle from not all that nonsense. I got through the chain phone tree of the people that I was in contact with, of like kind of what was spiraling. But it's when I left, it kind of sounded like they started making more rules.
Oh yeah. Well, I feel like as time's gone on, it's gotten more stricter because the world is more open to things. So it's like we have to be separated from the world because that, whatever it's, and they take it so extreme. So what I'm going to propose is the IFB people, the Bible thumping people that listen to us, that are all about the extremeness. You might as well never have a car. You might as well never have a TV. Don't have electricity because they didn't have that. You think Jesus rode in a Camaro? No, baby. He rode on a camel. So don't have a Camaro, blasting Aerosmith, with your little vape pen, acting like better than thou.
Right. And he also didn't wear like Johnston and Murphy shoes,
And
like all
also,
fancy
he
shoes.
didn't have a hard cut. He didn't have a no beard.
No, he had a
he
beard.
had a beard. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That the people like, oh, like, okay, for example, so and so had a beard, and someone was like, "Hey, he has facial hair. He can't be like here or whatever."
Oh,
remember?
yeah. Yes.
And
that was
like,
the pastor that
yeah,
told us that.
Yeah. And it was just like, no, Jesus did not, and Jesus was not white either. So stop making your coloring pages look like that. Jesus did not look like that. No.
Nobody knows what he looked
Nobody
like.
knows how far are you gonna take.
Made some good.
My thing is like, how far are you gonna take it too little? Because like they take it too little.
That's the thing.
It's like the hypocrisy. Oh my gosh.
It was interesting to watch, like you were just saying, like that dynamic of we're gonna pick and choose what we want to believe.
They cherry pick the Bible. You cannot cherry pick the Bible.
The other part of it, because the other flip side of some of this coin, the trust of that.
Yeah, it damages you. It makes you can't trust no one.
There's so many, especially when I did start drinking, and there were certain people I felt safe with years after. There are so many stories about me that I'm like, oh, really?
I did that? Oh, interesting.
Wow, I really, really glad I did that, but I wasn't there.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah, my favorite. Oh, I always say, tell different versions of gossip and see which one goes around first. That will tell you who said it, who started it, and also. Oh, my favorite thing is like hearing I said something or did something, and I go, "Oh, tell me more. What else did I not do?"
Well, like, and then the grouping that I'm with, the things that they pull out, and they know I'll admit to, they just do it as shock value to other people that are ex-cult members that haven't heard the stories, or people that are ripple effect to the affiliate to it, where my girlfriends will pull one out of their hat, and I'm like, "Yep," and they're like, I was in the church when you. Not my problem. I had fun. The stories that get added on, I constantly sit there and go, "Oh, I'm glad I did that." But
for sure,
if you're willing to think, if you're willing to honestly believe that, then we good.
Yeah,
we don't. Oh, I say that all the time. You don't like. I tell my close friends this. You don't need to defend me at all. And they're like, "Yes, I do. I need to." Right? They're like, "Yes, I do." I'm like, "No, you don't," because people who know me, know my heart, knows my intentions. They would never believe any of that. So you don't need to defend me. You don't need to be in screaming matches with family members about me. We good, baby. We good.
And my secondary to that, if this is a burden on you, bring it to my table. Let's talk.
Right.
Let's have a conversation. We're all adults now. We can have these conversations.
Right. Exactly.
Where's the free thinking on that one?
Right. So to kind of wrap up the episode, this has been an awesome discussion. I love it. I think it's going to help a lot of people who have gone through similar, experiences. But I do from time to time like to ask survivors, and I haven't done this in a while, but I'm going to ask this question because I think it's appropriate.
Question.
Yeah, I'm going to ask it because I think it's appropriate. So go back to when you were 17. If you could go back and give 17-year-old Barb some advice or say something to her, what would it be?
You won't always be in the dark spot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that flip coin part of it really plays into that. Because of the dynamics, and this is the part that I've been not avoiding. I don't know why I use that word. I joke, I make humor of my past, but the reality was I was a hurt child. I was being sexually abused by my father. The reality was there were so many red flags around me that nobody saw it. The reality of it is that a 17-year-old got pregnant, went through a traumatic scenario of not only losing a child, a relationship, a father, had the whole church know all about that. But when the exposure of his abuse was put out, and I still to this day, I know that not a lot of people know. The fact that I was ran through the coals, made to feel that I've struggled through it my whole life. And once that was exposed, not one of them, Christian, Bible thumping motherfuckers, came to me and said, I am sorry. I should have held your hand. We didn't see it. There's no acknowledgement of that. And for that needs to be exposed the worst. I was raked through the coals as a child. I was even raked through as an adult to a certain level on certain things, because I was used as a ruler for a while. At that church and a couple other ones, just because of the affiliations that they were in. But when that part was exposed, and unfortunately with my mother, that's part of the world, it was a cap put on it. I was put in counseling. I was not talked about. I was completely removed.
Yeah.
And nothing was ever said about him. And that's where that resentment comes in, of all you adults walked around me. I now knowing some of my friends, there's one person that has full knowledge. She knew it from the day one of me exposing it to her in relationship wise, once I felt comfortable with her. She can tell you now, when she looks back, she now recognizes the signs of when I was going through it. I have one friend that she turned around, she's like, she goes, I would have never, that never touched my world. I never saw that in your world, so on and so forth. And it goes back to, that's how fast and easy it can become to hide stuff like that. It needs to be exposed. Wrong is wrong. A child, a woman, any kind of abuse, it needs to be exposed. Those people need to be held accountable. And I don't know that if I didn't break from the church when I did, started questioning things, started going inside instead of listening to all the voices that were going in, I don't know that I would have ever exposed him. Even after death, it was still something that I toiled with, because the first thing out of everybody's mouth, where's your proof? Unfortunately, that was put out the most. Oh, I never, no, you weren't his type. You wouldn't have got those vibes from him. My one girlfriend blatantly sits there and she remembers a very specific moment. She was over my house. She was in my room. I think I was going to the bathroom or something, and Jim walked into my room and she was in there by herself. I walked in and started screaming like a banshee for him to get out of my fucking room. And she never understood why until she was an adult. She always questioned. She's like, that's your dad. I can't believe no, he doesn't need to be in my room. This is my private area. He doesn't need to be in a room with you. None of them understood until I started being more open and started going through and being like, listen, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. And one of my very good friends in Australia walked her path with this journey. She was a minister's child. She was exposed to people, and the person that did it to her was in her house, and it was her brother. I'm not alone. And one of the things I think that needs to be said, anybody that's either taking the hard steps to heal that part, there's time to take it in, work it out, but be loud, because the louder we get, the harder it makes for those guys to do it. And it doesn't matter what form it is. Abuse is abuse. And the sadness of the fact that you go to a place that's supposed to be your sanctuary, you feel wholesome, you feel loved. When I walk into those church, especially when I went back to prayer, those aren't the feelings I get. I have resentment, I have hurt, I have pain. I have anguish for not only me, but those that are struggling with it, are in it, and don't know how to get out of it. And that is one of the things that I was marked as a problem child. They never did the time. They threw the Bible at me. They threw Bible verses at me. They got me involved in every bus ministries. So, you name it. Everything was, oh, God will pray. You'll pray it away. Nobody prayed him away. And that part is so hard for me to watch other people that hold that Bible up and they hold their signs up of, for abortion and so on and so forth. And I'm like, you have no idea. Shut your mouth. If you haven't walked that walk, you do not have a judgment. You do not have opinion, because you do not know what it does to you. And it's so, so, so frustrating, especially, watching your podcast and stuff, and the validation that has not only come through, but that fire and that anger comes back, because here we go again. I've been trudging this for a long time, but now that I'm starting to hear other people's testimonies, and I'm going, it's finally happening. It's finally happening. Those that can will fill a need when you see a need. Don't come with judgment. Come with a hand. You may not be able to fix it all. Sometimes some of these women, no exaggeration, they get into the cycle where they're sexually abused by their father or brother or somebody consistently. They go into a relationship that bad behavior, marital behavior happens. Tend to be unbelievably not only the people pleaser, but then you open up the wound that your kids could be involved in this. And 99% of the time, they won't do anything until your kid's involved. And the fact that not that Jim was in a high, he wasn't a deacon or anything like that, but it was still the point of I was put on the cross, and everybody was like, oh, let's not talk bad about the dead.
Yeah, everybody wants to talk about the reaction instead of their actions, and it's just it's rapid in the IFB. And so we thank you so much for opening up and sharing your experience and your truth and what happened to you. And Jen and I appreciate that we're able to have people like you come on and share that, so then we can continue bringing awareness, being loud, saying, hey, we're done with it. It's 2025 now. We're not dealing with this anymore.
Right.
And I always say that to people, wanting accountability. Like, accountability is everything, right? If somebody, just say, I'm sorry, whatever, that can do a huge thing to some people. And I always tell people too, I am a firm believer, whether you get justice here on this earth or not, I do believe on judgment day.
The books always get balanced.
You'll get, yeah. And so I always tell people that, and so even though it feels like probably the weight of the world is on your shoulders, whatever, it does get, the grass is greener on the other side. And I'm not gonna paint it rainbows and unicorns. It's hard. It is very hard to get out of it. It is something that I will always struggle with, like, oh my gosh, my shirt. Oh, you can see my bra line in it. Oh, whatever. And I'm like, I'm living my best life now. That's
And it
not-
took me, it really did
It's
take,
hard. Yeah.
it took me a long time to find my footing on this side of the world.
But it's so much better, isn't it, Barb?
It is. And I can't say it enough. It was, there was some key factors that fell into place. And again, I believe everything happens for a reason.
No, yeah.
And I was very blessed to have a friend that I met through school that helped me navigate some of that.
It takes one person. It
She
really
would she would laugh at some of the things that I do, and she'd be like, well, that's not how the world, like that mentality of like, you okay? And I'm like, you guys don't do that.
I always say that it takes one person. It really does. It just to have at least one core person in your life, whether they agree with you or not, just to have that support and love is all. And so I just feel like if we continue on that path and whatever, and just have that one person, the grass is gonna be greener on the other side. And it's hard.
And that's part of the growth of it, because again, we came up on this whole theory of like people that are worldly or you stay away.
Yeah.
And the fact that I married somebody that was Catholic, that I've raised my children to just be open-minded. I never gave them like a dictation of who you need to worship. And they've chosen their own paths on that. And I'm very proud of it, because they are they're good people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the reflectiveness of all of what we talked about, and you asked about, that child me, the reflectiveness of being able to sit there and say, I made it through. I'm not perfect. I had to walk through a lot of hell to get here. But it can be done. And just by your guys' podcast, you're putting out that olive branch of not only hope, but hopefully in my high intentions of just putting that olive branch of, if you need to reach out, there are people out there that truly do understand you. And sometimes you don't have to say anything. You can just sit on the phone and just cry and have somebody be like, I'm here. I'm here. Because some of it, you don't have to talk about the dark stuff. It's the emotions that come with it. It's that overwhelming feeling. And I think that this podcast is really, really shedding a light on that dark. And I'm proud of you guys.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barb.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I this is just, and believe it or not, just one more step for me to heal that little person in me.
That's
I
awesome.
I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you, and thank you so much for speaking on today's episode. We appreciate, people like you who are willing to come on and share, their experience, just so that it helps one feel less alone. And that's our mission. And we're going to continue doing it as long as we want. And we are extremely thankful for you. So thank you so much, Barb.
Oh, you guys have a wonderful day.
You too. Barb.